Right now, something is happening in the financial world that most people are completely ignoring. Not because it is hidden, not because it is complicated, but because it does not make noise the way a stock market crash makes noise. It does not scream at you the way inflation screams at you when you stand at a grocery store counter. It moves quietly. It moves slowly. And by the time most people feel it, it is already too late to prepare. My name is Zara, and I have spent years studying how money works, how systems shift, and most importantly, how ordinary people either survive financial resets or get completely left behind by them. Today, I want to talk to you about something I call the quiet reset, a moment in financial history where the old rules stop working, where the habits that kept your parents comfortable begin to fail you, where the saving strategies that felt safe start to feel like standing on melting ice. I remember the first time I truly understood what a financial reset meant. It was not through a book. It was not through a seminar. It was through watching someone I deeply respected lose almost everything they had built over 20 years, not because they were foolish, not because they were greedy, but because they were loyal. Loyal to a version of money that no longer existed. This person had done everything right by the old playbook. They saved diligently. They kept their money in fixed deposits. They avoided debt. They lived below their means. And then, slowly, quietly, the system around them changed. Interest rates dropped. Inflation climbed. The purchasing power of everything they had saved began to shrink. Their loyalty to the old rules became the very thing that hurt them. That story stayed with me because I realized that a financial reset does not punish the lazy or the careless first. It punishes the prepared, but prepared for the wrong era. And that is exactly where we are today. We are living through what many serious economists and financial thinkers are quietly describing as one of the most significant resets in modern monetary history. The way money is created, stored, moved, and valued is changing underneath our feet. And most people are standing completely still, assuming the ground is solid. Let me explain what I mean by a reset, because this word gets used loosely and I want to be precise with you today. A financial reset is not a single event. It is not a market crash. It is not a recession. Those are symptoms. A true financial reset is a structural shift. It is when the underlying assumptions that govern how wealth is built, held, and transferred begin to change permanently. It is when the ladder you have been climbing your entire life gets repositioned against a different wall. Throughout history, these resets have happened before. The shift from gold-backed currency to fiat money was a reset. The rise of credit-based economies was a reset. The digitization of banking was a reset. Each time, the people who understood what was happening early, who were willing to question their assumptions and adapt their thinking, came out on the other side with more stability, more options, and more freedom. The people who refused to see it, or who saw it but chose comfort over adaptation, found themselves working harder for less, saving more but keeping less, and wondering why the formula they believed in stopped producing results. Today, we are at the edge of another one of those moments. And the reason I am making this video, the reason I want to sit with you through this entire conversation, is because I genuinely believe that what you learn or fail to learn in the next few years will determine the financial reality of the next few decades of your life. This is not fear. This is not doom. This is the honest, clear-eyed perspective of someone who has studied these patterns, made her own costly mistakes, and come out the other side with a very different understanding of how to protect and grow wealth in a world that is actively being redesigned. So let us begin. Let us talk about what this reset actually is, why it is happening right now, what it means for your money, and most importantly, what you can do about it. But we are going to take this one step at a time because good financial thinking is never rushed. And the biggest mistake people make during a reset is moving too fast, reacting too emotionally, and making decisions based on panic rather than understanding. By the end of this conversation, I want you to feel something very specific. Not fear, not excitement, clarity. The kind of clarity that makes you look at your financial life with honest eyes and say, I understand what is happening, I know what matters, and I know what my next step is. That is the goal. That is why we are here. And we are just getting started. In part 1, we talked about what a financial reset truly means. Not a crash, not a panic, a structural shift, a moment where the old rules begin to quietly stop working. Now I want to get more specific, because understanding that a reset is happening is one thing. Understanding exactly what is cracking and why is what separates someone who can navigate this moment from someone who simply survives it or does not. There are 3 pillars that have held up the personal finance world for the last several decades. 3 foundational beliefs that most people have built their entire financial lives around. And right now, all 3 of them are under serious, undeniable pressure. The first pillar is the belief that saving money in a bank is a path to financial security. For generations, this was true enough. You worked, you saved, you put your money somewhere safe, it earned a reasonable return, and over time, it grew. The system rewarded patience and discipline. But here is what has changed. In a world where the cost of living rises faster than the interest your savings earns, saving money in a traditional account is not building wealth. It is losing it slowly. Every year that your savings grow at 1 or 2%, while the real cost of goods, housing, education, and healthcare grows at 5 or 6 or 7%, you are falling behind. You feel safe because the number in your account is getting larger, but the purchasing power of that number, what it can actually buy you in the real world, is shrinking. This is not speculation. This is arithmetic. And yet millions of people continue to treat their bank account like a financial strategy rather than what it actually is in today's environment, a temporary holding place. I am not telling you to take your money out of banks. I am telling you that trusting a bank account as the primary vehicle of your long-term financial security is a belief built for a world that no longer fully exists. The second pillar is the belief that a single stable job is sufficient financial protection. This was the promise of the industrial age. Find a good company, be loyal, work hard, and in return, you will receive stability, a salary that grows over time, benefits, and eventually a pension or retirement package. That social contract is dissolving. Not everywhere and not all at once, but it is dissolving. The rise of automation, the restructuring of industries, the shift toward contract and gig-based employment, and the increasing pace at which entire job categories are being redefined, all of this means that a single income stream tied to a single employer is a fragile position to be in. The people who will thrive in the next decade are not necessarily the ones with the best jobs. They are the ones who have built multiple streams of income, who have developed skills that translate across industries, and who have created financial systems that do not depend entirely on one source continuing to flow. Again, I am not telling you to quit your job. I am telling you that treating your salary as your complete financial strategy is as risky today as keeping all your money in a single currency was during a period of hyperinflation. The risk is real, and most people are not accounting for it. The third pillar is perhaps the most emotionally charged one. It is the belief that the financial advice passed down through our families and communities is still relevant. Your parents and grandparents likely gave you their best wisdom. Save early, buy a house, avoid debt, do not take risks, work until retirement, and then live on what you have saved. That wisdom was shaped by the world they lived in, a world with different interest rates, different inflation patterns, different job markets, different lifespans, and different technological realities. The advice was not wrong for its time, but we are not in that time anymore. The person who lives by their grandmother's financial rules in today's economy is like a sailor using a map of rivers to navigate an ocean. The intention is good. The tools are simply no longer matched to the terrain. And here is the painful part. Because this inherited wisdom comes with love, with authority, with the weight of family and culture, questioning it feels disloyal. It feels risky. It feels like you are gambling with something precious. But the real gamble is not questioning it. The real gamble is letting attachment to old wisdom keep you from developing new understanding. I know this is uncomfortable. I sat with this discomfort myself for a long time. I remember the guilt of realizing that the financial blueprint I had been handed, the one I had followed faithfully for years, was not designed for the world I was actually living in. The world had changed. The blueprint had not. That moment of recognition was difficult, but it was also the beginning of something genuinely important. Because you cannot build the right structure on a cracked foundation. You have to be willing to see the cracks first. So we have identified the 3 cracking pillars: savings as security, single income dependence, and inherited financial wisdom applied without question to a fundamentally different world. In the next part, we are going to talk about what comes after recognition, because awareness without action is just anxiety, and I do not want you to walk away from this conversation simply more worried. I want you to walk away more equipped. The reset is real. But resets do not only destroy. For those who understand them, resets create opportunities that simply do not exist in stable times. That is what we explore next. I want to start this part with something important, something I need you to hold on to as we move through this conversation. A reset is not only an ending, it is also a beginning. Every major financial shift in history, every moment where old systems cracked and new ones emerged, created 2 distinct groups of people: those who saw only what was being lost, and those who also saw what was being built. The people who only saw the loss, they protected themselves by holding tighter to what they had. They became more conservative, more fearful, more rigid. And in doing so, they often preserved their old wealth while failing to participate in the new wealth being created around them. The people who saw both, the loss and the creation, they were able to make a different kind of decision, not a reckless one, not a speculative one, a thoughtful, long-term one. They asked a different question. Not just, what do I need to protect, but where is the new value being built, and how do I position myself to participate in it sensibly and sustainably? That is the question I want us to sit with now. So what is this reset actually creating? The first thing it is creating is a new relationship between people and assets. For most of financial history, building wealth through assets, through ownership of things that grow in value over time, was largely reserved for the wealthy. Buying property, investing in businesses, holding shares in companies, These were activities that required significant capital, significant access, and significant knowledge to participate in meaningfully. That barrier is lowering. Not disappearing, but lowering. The tools available to ordinary, everyday people to invest in diversified assets, to participate in markets that were previously inaccessible, to build ownership stakes in the economy. These tools are more accessible today than they have ever been in human history. This is not hype. This is a structural shift. And the people who understand this shift, who take the time to learn how these tools work, who approach them with patience and discipline rather than excitement and speculation, have an opportunity to do something genuinely remarkable. They have the opportunity to build the kind of long-term wealth that previous generations could only dream of. But here is the critical word I keep returning to: discipline. Because access to powerful tools without wisdom is dangerous. And the same technologies and platforms that create opportunity also create the perfect environment for impulsive, emotional, uninformed decision-making. We will talk more about that. The second thing this reset is creating is a new premium on financial literacy. For most of history, you could live a reasonably stable financial life with relatively limited financial knowledge. The system was simpler. The options were fewer. The rules were more fixed. You did not need to understand much to follow a straightforward path. That is no longer true. The financial landscape today is more complex, more fast-moving, and more full of both opportunity and danger than it has ever been. And the people who navigate it successfully are not necessarily the ones with the highest incomes. They are the ones with the clearest understanding. Financial literacy is no longer a luxury or a hobby for people who happen to enjoy spreadsheets. It is a survival skill. It is the difference between making decisions that compound in your favor over decades and making decisions that quietly erode everything you have worked for. And here is what I find genuinely hopeful about this. Financial literacy is learnable. It is not talent. It is not inherited. It is a set of principles, a way of thinking, a set of habits that anyone who is willing to invest the time and attention can develop, including you. Including the person watching this right now who has made financial mistakes, who feels behind, who is not sure where to start. You can learn this. You can develop this. And the reset, as disruptive as it is also creating more access to financial education than has ever existed before. The third thing this reset is creating is a new definition of financial security itself. The old definition was simple and static. Security meant a job with benefits, a house you owned, and enough in savings to retire. It was a destination. You arrived, and then you were safe. The new definition is more dynamic. Security today is less about arriving at a fixed point and more about building a system that is resilient, flexible, and capable of adapting. It is less about the size of your savings account and more about the diversity of your income sources. It is less about the value of your house and more about the robustness of your financial thinking. This shift is not a downgrade. It is actually a more honest and ultimately more powerful version of financial security. Because the old definition, the one that told you to find a safe job and save in a safe account, was always more fragile than it appeared. The reset is simply making that fragility visible. And when you can see clearly, you can build something genuinely solid. Now, before we move to part 4, I want to name something directly. Because this conversation, if it is doing its job, should be creating some discomfort in you. It should be prompting you to look at your own financial life and ask honest questions. That discomfort is not a problem. That discomfort is the beginning of change. The people who will look back on this period in history and say, I understood what was happening, and I made thoughtful decisions. They are not necessarily the people with the most money right now. They are the people who were willing to feel uncomfortable enough to think differently, to question, to learn, to adapt. That is who I am speaking to today. That is who I believe you are. In part 4, we go deeper. We talk about the specific mindset shifts and practical principles that allow you to not just survive a financial reset, but genuinely use it as a foundation for long-term, sustainable wealth building. This is where the work becomes concrete. We have covered what a reset is, what is cracking, and what is being created. Now I want to talk about the one thing that ties all of it together. The thing I have come to believe is the single most important factor in long-term financial success. It is not income. It is not timing. It is not even access to the right opportunities. It is mindset. Specifically, the kind of mindset that stays clear and steady when the financial world around it is shifting. The first principle is think in decades, not months. Everything in our environment is designed to make us think short-term. News cycles, market movements, social media stories about what someone made last week. All of it pulls your attention toward the immediate. And that pull is dangerous. Because wealth is not built in months. It is built in decades through compounding. Every time someone pulls a long-term investment out of short-term fear, they interrupt that process permanently. The mindset that survives resets is the one that can look at a volatile month and say, my decision was made for where I want to be in 10 years, not where the market is today. The second principle is that diversification is a philosophy, not just a strategy. Most people understand it as simply splitting investments, but the deeper version applies to your entire financial life, your income, your skills, your knowledge, your assets. A person dependent on one income source, one type of asset, one set of skills is fragile. Not because any single thing is bad, but because fragility is always a function of concentration. Resets are shocks. The only question when a shock arrives is whether your structure absorbs it or collapses under it. The third principle is the one most people overlook. In a period of financial reset, the learning curve itself is an asset. Right now, the financial tools and principles that will define wealth building in the next 20 years are still being understood by most people. That gap, for the person who decides to close it, represents a real and compounding advantage. Every hour you invest in genuine financial education during this reset shapes decisions that shape outcomes that shape the trajectory of the next decade. The reset is happening whether or not you engage with it. The only question is whether you will understand it or simply be shaped by it without ever choosing to be. If you have stayed through this entire conversation, that tells me something real about you. You are someone who takes their financial future seriously, who can sit with uncomfortable truth rather than look away from it. So let me honor that with complete honesty. The reset happening in the global financial system is not temporary. It is not a disruption that will settle back into the familiar. The world of money is not returning to what it was. And the people who wait for normal to come back before they start adapting are going to wait indefinitely. Because normal has already changed. That is the warning. Not that disaster is coming, but that the cost of doing nothing compounds just as surely as good investment returns compound, only in the wrong direction. Every year you save in a vehicle that does not keep pace with inflation, you fall further behind. Every year you depend on a single income without building any alternative, your fragility quietly deepens. Every year you delay genuine financial learning, the gap grows wider. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to honesty. Ask yourself 3 simple questions before you close this video. Where in my financial life am I most dependent on a single thing? That is where your fragility lives. What do I genuinely understand about how money works today? Not in theory, but in the actual current environment. And finally, if I continue doing exactly what I am doing for the next 5 years, where will I actually be? If any of those answers feel uncomfortable, that discomfort is not a problem. It is valuable information. Use it. You cannot control the reset, but you can control how prepared you are when it fully arrives, how informed your decisions are, how resilient the structure you have built is. The people who choose to understand this moment, who do the real work of adapting their thinking and their habits, are not guaranteed to become wealthy, but they are positioned to build something genuine and lasting. And in a world being reset, positioning is everything. This is Zara. Take care of your financial future. It is one of the most powerful ways you can take care of yourself and everyone who depends on you. This has been your warning.